Hey everybody, Ron Bielefeld, Whistling Wings Photography. Welcome back. Just got back from a busy 2 weeks doing tours up in the Northeast with a very good friend of mine, Harry Collins, where we co-led 2 week-long tours focusing on peregrine falcons, wood ducks, and great horned owls. The great horned owls, not so great. Happens sometimes. Falcons and wood ducks were really good. So everything turned out great there. But that's not the topic of this video I'm making today. The topic is how to set up a very versatile back button autofocus setup on the Canon R5. And when I was up in the Northeast photographing these birds, I tweaked my setup a bit and I came up with a setup I think works really, really well. Whether you're shooting falcons, whether you're shooting, which is like a single bird most of the time, right? You don't get flocks of falcons. Or ducks, like wood ducks, that happen to be in a group of other birds, many times swimming in a stream area, where it could be difficult to use eye detect with tracking, which is my main focusing method now that I use 90% of the time. And then maybe you have a situation where you have a flight of ducks coming in, maybe 2 or 3 at a time. I tweaked my setup to where I have eye detect with tracking, my main autofocus method. Most of the time I have that set to zone, and then spot autofocus for those times when you have a bunch of birds swimming around. And the eye autofocus, eye detect with tracking doesn't work really well because no matter how you do it, there's just too many eyes and it doesn't pick the eye you want or stay with the eye you want all the time. You can go to spot, having all 3 of those methods at your thumb tip in an instant. So if you're interested in how I set this up, I'll go through the menus and all that sort of stuff. Stay tuned. Okay, so let's start out this conversation about back button autofocus and how you can set up a really versatile system of multiple back buttons used for autofocus on the Canon R5. But let's talk about what back button autofocus is. Back button autofocus is an alternative to half press of the shutter button for initiating autofocus. A lot of times, really, half press of the shutter button isn't the best way to go. If you want to stay in AI servo, let's say, or servo type autofocus, and you want to then get focus, recompose, and then take the picture. We're not going to go into this in detail here, but half press of the shutter button isn't the way to go. Back button works much better in that scenario. Also, if you want to have multiple autofocus methods available to you, it's hard to program one button to do multiple things. Can't really do it autofocus wise with half press of the shutter button, one button. So we go to back buttons, and the Canon R5 has 3 back buttons that are positioned that your thumb can get to each one of them very easily. One is labeled the autofocus on, the other is an asterisk symbol, AEL button, and then you have the one to the right of that, which is the autofocus point selection button, all easily reached with your thumb. And with the cameras today, including the Canon R5, you can reprogram those buttons, and you can reprogram each one of them to do a separate autofocus method. And that's what I've done. So I have the autofocus on button set to animal eye detect with tracking. I have the asterisk button set to my main, to initiate the main autofocus method. I have my autofocus method select set to the control ring, either on the adapter if I'm using an EF lens on the Canon R5, or if I'm using an RF lens, it has the control ring. So that's how I select my main autofocus method. So whichever autofocus method I have selected, that's what the asterisk button will initiate. And then I have the autofocus point selection button, the one to the right of the asterisk button, set up to initiate spot autofocus. Now to get that spot up, you just press that one button, but to actually get the autofocus to initiate with the spot, you have to press both the asterisk button and the autofocus point select button at the same time, because really what the asterisk button is set up to do in this scenario is to initiate your main autofocus point. So whatever autofocus point or method that you have selected, it's what it's going to initiate. So that's the basic setup, and that gives you 3 autofocus methods available to you at an instant, just with the push of a button or 2 buttons with your thumb. So from here, let's go into the menu system, and I'll show you how to set up these 3 buttons like I have them set up, so that you can have 3 autofocus methods at your thumb tip. Okay, so let's jump into the menus. Really just one menu for the most part, and it's the custom function 3 menu. And from there we're going to go down to customize buttons. We'll get into the customize buttons. Now the first thing you're going to want to change, if you're shooting half press of the shutter button as your autofocus initiation method, you want to take that, go into your shutter button, and take it off of this setting where it says AF and metering, right? Metering and AF start. Take it off of that and put it on metering start. Once we're done there, we can go down to the autofocus on button. And you can see I have it to the eye autofocus setting. You can see that by the icon. If we go in there, there's lots of different things that you can set this autofocus on button to do. But again, we want it on the eye AF. If we go down to the asterisk button, you can see that I have it set to metering and autofocus start, which is what the shutter button defaults to half press when you get your camera. But now we're switching that to the AE lock button, the asterisk button. Get out of that. Now we go down to the autofocus point button, and you can see that I have it set to switch to registered autofocus point. Now that's only one part of what needs to be done here. You have to look down at the bottom left where it says info button, hit the info button for detail set. So let's go in there, and you can see switch to registered autofocus function, and here is where you can pick the actual autofocus method that you want to assign as your registered autofocus function. You can pick from any of them. I want it to be spot, because there are times when eye autofocus isn't grabbing an eye, when zone isn't, or something. You know, if I have the AE lock button set to zone, that's not going to pick what I want. I need a very small area for the autofocus to pick. I set it to spot. Okay, so we set it to spot. Make sure then that it is checked, right? And that's it. I don't check anything under tracking sensitivity or XL, decel. I don't move those in this location. I leave them where they are. It's worked the best for me that way. So that's it. You now have the 3 buttons on the back of the camera that are, you know, up where your thumb can reach there. Autofocus on, the asterisk AE lock button, and the autofocus point selection button, all set up to initiate 3 different autofocus methods basically instantly, whichever one you choose. So always remember to get the point to work, the point autofocus, or the spot, I'm sorry, autofocus to work. You have to also press the asterisk button and the autofocus point select button at the same time. If you hit just the autofocus point select button, then the spot will come up wherever you have it in the center, but it's not going to be autofocusing if you're on servo autofocus or any even one shot. You have to press the asterisk button and the autofocus point button at the same time. From here, we'll go back and we're going to take a look at some scenarios, some actual pictures, some video clips possibly, where I would use the 3 different methods. And then we'll finish up from there. Okay, for this first clip of some harlequin ducks swimming, I would definitely try eye autofocus here, because good luck trying to track with spot or even with zone catching the waves. I definitely would try eye. The birds are separated enough for the first instance there. There's another one where I would use eye autofocus. I'm actually using eye tracking on the video because the birds were separated from everybody else, the wood ducks in this case. But as they get into the other birds, if you know, the eye autofocus starts having trouble, you might want to go to point. Here I would go with point because the birds aren't moving, easy targets, and several eyes involved. So I would just try to put the point and keep the point on the breast of the top bird and go with autofocus that way. You could use zone here as well, but I would just switch back and forth to see what was going on and what would work best. On these 2 wood ducks, eye tracking, so you press the autofocus on button in this case, is absolutely what to go with. An option would be zone, because the bird isn't moving, and when the bird's eye was hidden, you wouldn't be able to detect the eye. But now with the bird's eye visible, you could go to eye, make sure you've got the eye, and then let go and keep shooting. Or you could go with spot and just keep it on the head of the bird or the body of the bird. You should have enough depth of field to get the entire bird in focus, even if you're not right on the eye. Given the eye keeps moving, I'll tell you the Canon R5 is really good at keeping on the eye, and if not the eye, the head, and then defaulting to the body. That is a quick, very quick look at what you might want to do with autofocus and the 3 buttons being set up for 3 different autofocus methods. Now that's, you know, shows a pretty good breadth of opportunities and different types of scenarios to try to do autofocus, and you can see why having the different methods at your fingertip, your thumb tip in this case, could be really handy, because things change really fast a lot of times when you're out there, and you don't want to have to try to change autofocus methods using the control ring or any other method that you may have set up, because sometimes it just takes too long. Okay, well, that was a real quick run through of how I have my back button autofocus set up on my Canon R5. I hope you found this video somewhat informative, and if you have any questions, as usual, please leave them in the comment section below. I love to get comments, and I do the best I can to get back to the comments as quickly as I can. As always, please, if you like what's being presented on my channel, please subscribe and check notifications so you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. So, until next time, get out there, take some awesome images, and I'll see you soon.